Hello everybody and welcome to our final garment makers questions for 2024 and actually our last little bit of show and recording for 2024. So a bit of a momentous evening this evening. We have got lots of really good, and I mean it, really good questions lined up for you this evening. David of course is here. Peter is here. I am with the Tin Soldier and the Snow Queen, who is looking icily beautiful there, but we are all going to be as warm as toast. I have just turned the thermostat up so it is really nice and warm in here. So let us hear where you are watching from.
Hi everybody, so the first person on tonight was Jennifer Clifford. She says, Merry Christmas everyone, I've just finished watching Philippa's lampshade class, very good. So I think you not only get the prize for the first person on the chat, you also get the first person who we know of who has watched the class all the way through. So well done Jennifer. Pip Williamson, looking forward to the questions. Lane Parry, Merry Christmas. Sarah Runicles, Merry Christmas fellow Naylorettes. And then Nan Angelica, putting her feet up for a bit in this hectic lead up to Christmas. And Tari says, hi everyone, Merry Christmas. Silla Moncrief, Happy Christmas. Rosemary Soper says, hi from Bournemouth. We've got a question from you tonight, I think, Rosemary, haven't we? We've got one from Sarah as well. Janet Chisholm, Happy Christmas to everyone. So I think we're good to go. We're going for atmospheric tonight. So hopefully it doesn't just look dark. Hopefully it looks Christmassy and atmospheric.
Oh, don't we? I've got a little screen in front of me so I can see what you can see, and I am very conscious that I am wearing the wrong colour dress. It should be green or red, and I did have a red dress there and I was going to go and change it, but I just decided to go with the royal purple. And talking of royal purple, Peter, would you like to come and say hello to everybody and help me with the prize draw? So Peter's just pulled a Christmassy looking jumper out of his bottom drawer, which I don't think has seen the light of day for several years because I don't even recognise it. He was trying to tell me that I bought it for him, but I really don't recognise it. Now, have you got anything to say to everybody, Peter? Are you going to wish him a happy Christmas?
Yes. Happy Christmas, everyone. Yes.
They don't know what the prize is yet, so just hang on. So the best things come in small parcels, as we know. And was it earlier this year, Peter? It seems such a long time ago. We visited Whiteley's scissor manufacturer near Sheffield, the oldest scissor manufacturer in the Western world. So we decided that meant that there might have been somewhere in Japan that had been making scissors for long. And I can't now remember the date, can you? It was getting on for 300 years, wasn't it?
Yeah, long time, yeah.
Anyway, in here, well, I've got two pairs of these. I can't actually take them out of the box because they're held in with cable ties, and there's a very bright attention here that says, please detach the cable ties from the reverse of the cardboard in order to avoid damaging the scissors. So I can't get those out to actually show you them, but they are beautiful, small, sharp, handmade scissors that come in a lovely little box and then in their own little fabric bag as well. So
I'll tell you on the bag, look.
Oh, thank you very much, Peter. Oh, well done. Let's hope I do better on the questions than that. So, two lucky winners this evening. We're going to draw two numbers out, or Peter is, and then we'll let you know at the end. As most of you already know, you don't have to do anything, you just need to be one of our paid up members to be eligible. So, fingers crossed. So, two tickets, please.
2 tickets.
Thank you, Peter, and we will see you later. Okay, so I wonder who is going to win those gorgeous scissors. Actually, do you know, and they've been sat at the other side of the studio all this time. I didn't even buy myself this style of scissors. I don't know what I was thinking, but anyway. Right, let us start with the very first question.
Okay, so the first question is from Helen Milford, and there is an image that goes with this, which hopefully I've teed up. And Helen says, I bought this lovely silk in Singapore. I fight it every step of the way, tack everything. I'm pretty sure it really is silk because the burn test left ash and it burned slow. As you can see, I keep getting missed stitches with the grey thread, but not with embroidery thread. What should I be using to avoid these missed stitches? I was assured in the shop that the needles and thread shown would be right for this fabric. What can you tell us, Philippa?
Well, I hate to contradict somebody from a shop, or maybe I love to contradict somebody from a shop. That might be more the truth, mightn't it? So I imagine, Helen, that you are making a blouse or a shirt, and that this is the collar, and we are looking at the top stitching on the top collar, and then we're seeing the collar band there. And I'm just going to compliment you on it because it all looks beautifully neat. So although it's a very movable fabric, all of your seam allowances look really even, your basting looks really even. That piece that you've got basted back there, that seam allowance you've got basted back, it looks really super nice, even tacking. I mean, I've really studied this photograph, which is probably a little bit scary. So I have several things to say to you. I looked at the spool of thread. You did a really good job with your image, by the way, because I've got the needles, I've got the thread, I've got the foot. I'll carry on with that and I'll just backtrack on that. But I looked at your thread and I didn't recognise that lilac coloured spool, and at first I thought it said silk, but then I looked at it again later and I realised it said silk finish, and what that means is it's a cotton thread. I knew it was going to be a cotton thread, so I then went to research it, and it is a Metler thread. It's a silk, in one place it's called silk finish candlewick cotton thread, and it's a 50 weight thread, so it is a good weight. It's a nice fine thread. It's a mercerized cotton, so it's been treated with caustic soda to change the properties. We chat about this in the fibres class, and so it's very smooth and glossy. However, what I would say to you is as you know, I'm not a big fan of cotton threads for garment making. They are inelastic and don't have the strength that I actually prefer. And I do prefer either a genuine silk thread, and Gutman's make a beautiful silk thread that is great for garment making, or I prefer a polyester thread. It is a little bit debatable about polyester thread because you don't really want to be using Gutman sew-all on this fine fabric, so I might, because you've got this gorgeous fabric, I might suggest that you change to a silk thread, but I don't actually think that that is the main problem with the stitch. What I think about the silk thread is that it doesn't have the elasticity that I think is great for longevity in wear in garments. Okay, so that's just a kind of little aside really. I think also that your needle, it's probably okay for most of the work, but where you're sewing through several layers, so here you've got your top collar, which is two pieces of fabric with an interfacing in between, and then you are sewing that to the collar band, so you've got 4 layers that you are stitching through there. You might be better with a 70 needle, the next size up. That might help. You might not want that for all of the stitching that you're doing, but where you've got more layers you might need something a little bit robust. But what I wonder is if it's to do with the foot, and I can't actually see your stitch plate. Now, I researched Fee on all the brands, the top brands, because I couldn't see what brand your sewing machine is, but what I think is that is a satin stitch foot. Okay, now you might have chosen that because it gives you really good visibility for what you're doing. However, you can see that between the two sides of the foot there is a really big space, so there's a lot of play of the work as it goes through the sewing machine. It's not held tightly, and also the satin stitch foot has a groove on the underside to allow the kind of bulk, as it were, of the satin stitch to go underneath the foot. So you've got this channel, so only a little bit of the foot is actually clamping the fabric down, so I think you've got movement there. I always sew with my 1/4 inch foot when I'm doing general garment making, for most things really, because it holds the work much more securely. And I wonder that you don't have a straight stitch plate, and that particular foot, and if you don't have a straight stitch plate, there's a lot of movement of the work as it goes through the sewing machine, and also a factor will be that fine needle with those multiple layers. I think all of those factors together are what is causing the skipped stitches. You've got fewer layers where you're doing your top stitching and where you're using your decorative polyester thread, which has got a bit more stretch to it, a bit more elasticity. So that'll be contributing to the fact that that's actually working okay, but it's the other that isn't. So I really do want to know, and if you're listening tonight, I'd love you to give me some feedback on the foot and the stitch plays. And if you're going to watch this on catch up, let us know, because we always want to know, because that's really helpful for everybody else. So really good question, really good photo, really beautiful work, a few tweaks, and hopefully all of those little niggles will be solved.
Okay, thank you. So hopefully that will sort you out, Helen. Now the next question is from Rosemary Soper, and Rosemary's already said hello on the chat, so we know that she is listening. And Rosemary says, hi Philippa, David, Peter and Kelly. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to you all. Thank you very much, Rosemary. She says, I treated myself to 3 meters of gorgeous Linton tweed in the sale, number X31282, navy and cream wool. And we've got some images that I can show you. Oh, that didn't work. There we go. It's fairly lightweight fabric and slightly loose weave. I was planning on making the Ray dress, which is the one on the left there, with longer sleeves and lining it with viscose or bamboo silk. However, I'm now wondering if this fabric will be suitable as it has so much give. What do you think, Philippa? And then she goes on, any advice or suggestions would be really appreciated, or ideas for more appropriate patterns. Although Rosemary says she definitely doesn't need any more jackets, so we're going to interpret that any way we like. Many thanks for your invaluable advice, and that's Rosemary from Bournemouth.
Yeah, I had a little chuckle when I read that you didn't want to make any more jackets.
Is that because you've already got lots of jackets?
Yeah, what she's saying is, I am not making a Chanel jacket with this Chanel style fabric. I'm just not going there. Okay, so Rosemary, well, your fabric looks really beautiful and well done. I did do a little post when it was the Linton Tweed sale, so that people could see if they could pick up some bargains, and you've got a lovely fabric there. I actually think that it should be fine for the dress, because the dress isn't fitted, is it? It is fairly loose. I don't think it's going to be a dress that you are going to be wearing a lot of. You are going to be saving it for special occasions. If you're doing longer sleeve and you're lining it, it is going to be quite warm. And so I think that the amount of times that you are wearing it is going to be fairly limited. That means it's not going to get overused, doesn't it? So I think that the lining is essential. I'm not really sure how you propose to do the lining. I don't know this pattern, and I don't know whether there is a lining pattern there, because it looks, it's a little hard to see, but it looks like there's some gathering or some pleating or some treatment at the neckline, and I want to kind of know what happens with the facing and how you would attach the lining, how that's going to go. What I might do, and again, as this is just a suggestion because I don't really know the whole story on the pattern, that you make like a shift dress lining that could be separate, or it could just be attached at the sleeves or something like that. The value of it, if it is separate, is you can launder it on its own, can't you? I mean, it might be good to have a little bit of a sleeve in the lining, because it will protect that outer fabric a little bit, won't it? But what I think is that if the circumference of the area around the waist and the hips and bottom of the lining is just slightly smaller than the outer fabric, when you are wearing it and when you sit down, it won't be tight, but that'll take the, it's not going, I don't, strain's the wrong word, but that'll take the kind of movement, won't it, and the kind of slight tension on the fabric when you are sat down. And so that will protect the outer fabric from that problem of seating, where you get, you know, bagginess over the bum of the dress, that kind of thing. So I think that is your answer, is just keep the lining the same on all the upper body measurements, but just skim it in ever so slightly through the waist and hips and bottom, so that the lining takes the kind of wear, as it were, and not the outer fabric. And I think that and then it should be really lovely. So we look forward to seeing it, and I would like to see you wearing this with one of the jackets that you've got, possibly one you've made.
Okay, thank you. So the next question is from Sarah Runnacles, and Sarah is a regular contributor to the questions, and she says, my trusty 30-year-old Bernina 1230 has efficiently turned up its toes mid Chanel style jacket. It must have been the 6 peg bags and 7 pin cushions that finished it off. I'm doing lots of research and would value Philippa's opinion as to whether I buy the 2024 equivalent of the 1230, which would be a Bernina 570, or upgrade a bit more, or buy a second-hand newer one, as people say they are more durable. Sander has to get a wiggle on with this decision, as I'm using a tinny 20-year-old machine gifted to me, and it's like using a go-kart after driving a Rolls Royce. Thank you for all your hard work, and Merry Christmas. And that's Sarah Runnacles.
Oh, Sarah, it's a sad day, isn't it, when a trusty machine dies? But it's also a happy day because it means that you can get something new. I had both. I still have them actually. My boys have them. A 1260 and an 1130, bought in 1989, which are of that era. Now they do still go, but I did have to retire them because they just weren't working so well. I think that this is quite a hard call, and we all sew different things and sew differently. So I'm going to tell you what I would do, and then you can decide whether you think this advice is applicable to what you do. I have 2 of the 700 series machines. One of them is 10 years old. One of them is probably about 8 or 9 years old. The 10-year-old is the machine with the 5.5mm feed dogs, and it's the machine I use most often. The other machine has the 9mm feed dogs, and I use that more for embroidery stitches, satin stitch, that kind of thing. If I was going to buy a new machine, a new Bernina, what I personally would buy, if I could only have one machine, I would have the 735. Any of the Bernina machines, if the number has a 5 at the end, it's a 5.5mm feed dogs. All of the others are 9mm feed dogs, particularly with garment making. And it goes back really to the first question that we chatted about with skip stitchings and things. The narrower feed dogs make a big difference to accuracy. And so that would be what I would choose. Now, I told you that the one that I use most often with the 5.5mm feed dogs is 10 years old. And I'm going to tempt fate here, but I've never had an issue with it. It is just a dream to work with, okay? It has never had any problems whatsoever. So I think the idea that the older machines are more durable, I have to say I don't really hold with that. I think that the new machines are equally as robust, but they are more complex and they take more learning. And so I think that there's maybe a slight kind of reluctance with people with those machines because they're a bit intimidating in a way that the older machines are a little bit more a little bit easier to use. And yeah, I will say that there are more plastic parts to the newer models, and the older ones did have more metal parts, but they're still incredibly robust machines. So that is what I would buy, but you need to really research it. You're not very far from the Barnyarns sew centre in Ripon where you live, and they have got the Berninas all there. And if you get in touch with Callum and say that I sent you and go with a load of fabric and bits and pieces, they will let you really try out the various models and see what you think there. So yeah, that I wouldn't. I know there's a temptation to kind of think you must get the machine straight away, but I would seriously do your research before you buy your machines, and be aware as well that all of your lovely old feet that you gathered over all those 30 years are not going to fit the new Bernina machines. The fitting is different. So if you want a suggested list of feet to buy, we could have another chat later on,
maybe another,
next month. Yeah, yeah.
Another question next month.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so hopefully that is helpful to you, Sarah. Okay, the next question is from Alison Abbott, and Alison says, I would like to ask if Philippa has any helpful hints and tips on making girls' knickers. I have a granddaughter who is very small and can't buy underwear in her size, age 3, but she's a size 12 months, and that's from Alison Abbott.
Well, as you know, Alison, or may not know, I used to be a lingerie designer, and when I read that, I thought, well, I wouldn't even go there, even as a lingerie designer. This is what I think, so I'm going to be entirely honest with you. I mean, your little granddaughter at 3 years old, she must have been the most gorgeous little darling thing. She must be so tiny and beautiful. Knickers are so inexpensive. I mean, David didn't really want to have the conversation about girls' knickers, but we both said, well, you can get a pack of 5 for about £5. So, you know, do you really want to go to the trouble of making knickers when they can be bought so inexpensively? I haven't looked into it, so I don't really know. David did wonder if tiny knickers were still, they were supposed to have a nappy underneath, and so they were too, you know, knickers for little tiny tots were too big. So I personally might be tempted just to buy smaller knickers, but if you really did want to make them, my suggestion would be that you would buy ones that were too big and you would alter them. I think the easiest thing to do would be to take in the side seams and maybe chop a little bit off the top and re-elastic them, and then you wouldn't have to worry about doing all the elastic around the legs, you wouldn't have to worry about doing the gusset, that would already be there for you. You can do it on a regular sewing machine if you don't have an overlocker, so you could sew your side seams with one of the overlocking type stitches. With the Bernina, there's a foot number 2 which has a little pin to the side which overlocking stitches are formed over to stop the stitches pulling in, to make sure that they hold their width, and you'll be able to just stitch over the elastic at the sides of the leg, and then I would fold the elastic, the seam, to the back, and I would just do a little straight stitch over the elastic just to hold that in place and keep it flat so that it wasn't irritated. In terms of the top, if you were taking the elastic off and you were wanting to reduce the depth of the knicker, you could use your 333 stitch, which goes 1 2 3 1 2 3. Stretch the elastic as you sew it on, baste it, and then use that stitch. That will do the job if you don't have an overlocker. So I'd be very tempted to start with bought knickers and just take them and make them smaller if you really can't find what you need. But Granny, you are an amazing granny. It might be nicer to make lovely little dresses. Okay.
Okay, so thank you. A couple of comments. We've got Fiona Harpin says, love the outfit, Philippa. Rosemary Soper, who was asking the question earlier on and said she didn't want to make any more jackets, she's posted to say she already has a choice of 4 Chanel jackets. So she doesn't need any more. So we're all very jealous at this end. And Sarah Runickel says, thank you, very helpful response, Barn Yarns, here I come. Okay, the next question is from Pippa from Nottingham, and I think Pippa's on as well. I think she said hello, and she says, I always admire what you make, Philippa. I would love to know where you buy your beautiful, vibrant fabric. And that's Happy Christmas from Pippa in Nottingham. So I'm sure there must be some lovely places down. My daughter's in Leicester, and that's the kind of fabric home, isn't it? But Philippa, where do you get your fabric from?
So Pippa, weren't we chatting on Instagram this morning? I'm sure we were. Two conversations in one day. Right, now then, where do I get my fabrics from? Well, I do have a large collection of garment making fabrics. It's much larger than my quilting fabrics, and some of those fabrics I have had for many years. I do think it is quite difficult to find fabric these days. There simply aren't the fabric shops that there used to be. So anytime I'm at a show, any kind of fabric show, so festival quilts, anything like that, I'm always looking to see if there is anybody selling garment making fabrics, and most often there is. That is not to say that quilting fabrics don't make great clothes. They do. So any beautiful bright quilting cottons, and we have lots of quilting shops, far more quilting shops than garment fabric making shops. Go into a quilt shop and find some beautiful printed cotton make fantastic blouses and dresses and summer skirts. I would always pre-wash it first, but don't discount quilting fabrics. And then just if I'm on holiday or if I'm in London, or always make a beeline for Liberty and see what I can find in Liberty. And I have got quite a stock of Liberty fabrics in the cupboard there. But anywhere I am on this fabric, if I know I'm going somewhere, I'll do a little Google search beforehand and see if there are any fabric shops. I used to buy a lot of fabric when I used to travel a lot in the States and buy stuff there. But I think it's just a question of keeping your eye open what's out. And sometimes you just have to take a leap of faith and buy online. The Craft House has quite good fabrics, and if you sign up to various fabric shops newsletters, they will let you know when they've got new stuff in. There's a really nice shop in London called Ray Fabric, which I think is Islington. That's worth a trip. So perhaps it's a really good question to ask in the Facebook group, because lots of people will have really good places that they like to use. That's another one. Fabworks in Dewsbury is really good, and they will send you little swatches. So just anything you like, and always think just buy it if you like it. Buy 3 meters. You can always make something out of 3 meters. That's what 3 meters was for the very first question there. 3 meters is always a good amount to buy. So just because we were chatting about that, David's just going to put a little picture up, because Peter and I recently had a Christmas trip, and we went on the North Yorkshire Moors Railway Christmas lunch trip, which went from Gromont to Pickering in North Yorkshire. We got on the train at 1:45 and we were back by 3:30, and it's a steam train, you can see there. We were the only people dressed in kind of 1940s clothes, and when we got there, we were parking our car in the station car park. The ticket machine was broken, and it said to go into the shop on the station to pay for your parking. Well, as soon as the guy behind the counter saw Peter, said, "You don't need to pay anything for the parking." So the parking only cost us a whole amount of effort, but that was really, really lovely of him. So what they said when I booked the ticket was, come dressed warmly, because the heating may not work very well. So I did make, especially for it, and it was a bit of a rush, but I did make a 1940s style woolen kind of coat dress really, and hat. And I think David's got the pattern pictures that he can show you before I just explain a little bit more about it. So I'll just show you those in case you're inspired to have a go. He's just finding it. Sorry.
So there's the pattern pictures.
Okay, so the pattern is a vintage Vogue, and it's V9127. Now I have had it for some years, but I do think it is actually still current. And then also the hat pattern is also a Vogue pattern, which is 7464. Now I want to tell you about the fabric for the dress, because I did get this from, I think, the new Craft House, and the email came through to say they had a little bit of this fabric, and it immediately appealed to me. It's a woolen fabric, and it's called it's cassatin, I imagine is how you pronounce it. It is CASETIN, and it's Italian. It's been made in Italy, and they have been making this style of wool, this fabric, since the 14th century. And it was originally made for peasants and shepherds and outdoor workers to keep them warm. And this email just said they had a very small amount, and I thought, oh, I'd be really interested to see that. So I probably bought 3 meters. No, actually I didn't buy 3 meters, because there probably wasn't 3 meters. Probably bought 2 meters. And it has a very a rough textured surface to it. I mean, it looks like pilling, but that is how it is actually manufactured. And when it is made, after it has been woven, it goes through a shrinking and kind of fulling process, and it reduces it reduces it by 30% and makes it really warm and really, really waterproof. So that would be perfect for this coat dress. I have to say to you, it was a bit too thick really. Would have been better for a coat, but I was so short of fabric, I just just managed to squeeze it out. So I used a silk that had been given by my nephew for the collar and the front facing, but because this has been so felted, what was really great about it is that it simply doesn't fray. And so some of the seams I just used my curvy scallop pinking shears and just cut the edge, and I just laid one piece of fabric on top of the other to stitch it. You won't be able to see it, but I've done it on the yoke here. So what I've got is a pinked edge and 2 rows of stitching, so that adds another dimension. And I was really short of time. I'm always short of time. So the bottom hem and the cuffs, I just pinked them. They're never going to shift. They're never going to go anywhere. And the buttons were perfect. They came out of my my Auntie Jean's button tin that which was gifted to me when she died. But the little hat, I haven't ever really made hats before, and it was really good fun, not difficult. So I do kind of suggest that you give it a go. It was made in several sections. Again, this piece of silk fabric, so it's a slubbed silk, but you can see that this silk has got a nice crispness to it, so it's perfect because it'll kind of stand and hold its shape. But you're supposed to use buckram in between the layers to stiffen it, and I didn't have any buckram, and it was the weekend, so I used a product called Tilt, which is a very stiff sort of twill cotton, which is actually used as the stiffening for corsets. And you need florist wire so that you can put wire in, sorry, not florist wire, milliner's wire, so you can put wire in the edge so that you can shape it. Well, I didn't have any, but I did have florist wire. And if you look on my Instagram, you'll see that. So it's got florist wire in it, another vintage button, and it was just really fun to make, but it wouldn't stay on my head. So I bought some little metal headbands from a milliner online and stitched it onto a little headband so that it stayed on my head. And I have to say that when you put a hat on and you wear it at a jaunty angle like that, it makes you very ladylike because you've got to sit up straight. But also we were driving to the train in the car and Peter sat driving. And every time he talked, we have to turn my head right round and the most aching neck at the end of it. But it was well worth it because we got free parking. So I'm going to pop that back on the floor.
Be on the Philippa hat making class.
Yes, the hat making class. Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Another question, having watched Conclave.
Oh, that was what I just said. Yeah.
Was that the same fabric?
No, so that is very interesting, and I've got it written down here. Come in, Peter, and come and chat because we need you anyway. So last night went to see the Conclave, which is Ranulph Fiennes as Peter Rex the studio. It is the story of, it's fictional, but it's about choosing a new pope. The pope dies unexpectedly and all of the cardinals come from all over the world and they have to choose a new pope. And if any of you have seen it, some of you will have done, they're all wearing woolen cassocks of exactly that colour, and of course I studied it really closely. Are they wearing the same fabric as that? But it was much smoother, so I think that was a much higher quality, very similar colour, and apparently the traditional fabric was green and the red came about, this is again centuries ago, because somebody made a mistake in the dyeing and they got this amazing red colour which they actually call orange, and the fabric nearly did go out of production sort of 10 years ago, but like all of these things, handmade items of all kinds are much more appreciated, and so it's now having a revival, which is amazing because if it's been going since the 14th century, we certainly don't want to lose it. So have you got a little tray to bring in or something,
I do.
Peter? So we're just going to have a little toast and a little slideshow. We did do this on Tuesday with our garment makers. I'm sorry, I've got a light here, Peter, so I can't really move any further, but we just had a little review of the year just to thank everybody, so while Peter's just doing that, maybe David would be kind enough just to pop those few images on. So just before I chat about, sorry David, I'm sorry, could we just go back, sorry. I did thank Peter. I mean, David and I get paid for this, you know. Peter gets paid it when he does the handouts, but he doesn't get paid very much for the inconvenience that is caused to him when we take over the house. So, no, really, genuinely, you are extremely kind to us and very generous and very uncomplaining. So, everybody really appreciates that. And also Kelly, who we will see shortly. Kelly does the most amazing job for us. And, you know, when we originally interviewed Kelly online, there she is, and we said we'd probably need you for about an hour a day, and Kelly explained that she didn't really work weekends, but she's always there. Every day she dips in, doesn't she? She's really goes above and beyond to try and do her best to keep us all ticking along and happy. So Kelly, we really do appreciate it. We'll just have the little slideshow, and then we'll just do a little toast to all of you. So the Chanel jacket class, it was an epic, and I know that we chatted about it for a very long time, and it was a long time in coming. It took an awful long time to make the samples and to film it and then edit it. And those of you who have made the Chanel jacket know how much detail you can put into it if you choose. But I'm very proud of that class, and I'm really pleased that we have done it. And yes, I do still have an unfinished Chanel jacket tucked away that I need to get on with, but I will get to it. And there we are at the Festival of Quilts, which was really lovely, and we saw lots of our garment making members there, not just our quilt makers. And it's really lovely. They come up to us in the show, and some of you we know really well. We've seen you over a number of years, and some of you are new from before I was doing Quilters Question Time. But sometimes it'll be a new lady, and we'll be chatting. It's usually quite busy, but there'll be this person, you can see her out the corner right, and she will be beaming like an absolute sunbeam, and I'll just think, you're one of our students, because you know me, but I don't actually know you. And she'll come and introduce herself, and so it's really lovely.
People are wearing the clothes they've made.
They do, yeah, and they look so professional. I mean, I can just picture a lot of them. You look amazing in them, and it's just so delightful to see that. So we've thoroughly enjoyed meeting you all at the Festival of Quilts there. It is great fun getting all of that together. Oh yeah, the Chanel jacket again deserves another mention. And then we had quite a few new classes, and these were designed to be suitable for both our quilt makers and our garment makers. So the pin cushion class, we already know Sarah's got hers sent off to her friends. There was the fibres, fabrics and filaments class, and the sewing machine savvy class. They went nicely together, hand in hand with one another. And the peg bag class, which I know there's lots of peg bags going out this Christmas. And then we have just finished and released yesterday, didn't we? Yeah, yesterday, the lampshade class. I know quite a number of you have bought it already, and one or two of you have even managed to watch it. I'm very pleased with how that class has come out. I think it's a lovely class, and the projects are really doable, really satisfying, really going to make a difference to the look of your home. So Peter's disappeared again, but can I pass you a glass, David?
Okay.
It doesn't matter if you spill it on the ice queen's dress. So before we carry on with the remainder of the questions, thanks so much for being a member and being involved in everything that we do. We really appreciate it. And David and I always say this, you know, the actual live sessions are the highlight of the month, aren't they? They're always a joy to do. So to all of you, thank you for being part of our family. Cheers.
Cheers.
Oh, cheers. Well, we've got a clink across the table, but cheers. So, we will carry on. Peter, could I give you that, please? And then...
Did you want to say anything about the soldier and the other things while we're doing that one?
I can, if you like. Yes, the soldier and the ice queen here. These are from our Christmas decoration. So we live, as you may know, in a 3-storey Victorian terrace, and the downstairs is a separate flat, which has been an ongoing renovation for simply years, and I'm sure sick of hearing about it. However, at Christmas time, we put a big display in the window, and the tin soldier there, Peter made him out of cardboard and card and wrapping paper, the inner tubes of from carpets and that kind of thing. Likewise, the Ice Queen here, she was in a sleigh last year, all of her clothes fabric have come from boys, for those of you who live in this area. But she was originally a ballerina, and she had legs, and she was on a turntable, and she had a tutu, and she spun, and she spent one Christmas as a ballerina, and then she had her legs chopped off. And she was sat in a sleigh the following year as an ice cream. So they do get recycled, but it's always a bit of we're reluctant to throw them away, but we can't really store them all. But anyway, on to the last questions, and let's see if we can solve your final sewing issue so that you can stitch over the holidays if you have a bit of time.
Okay, so the next question is from... Who is it from? It is from Pam Exley. And Pam says, I'm thoroughly enjoying the dressmaking course and learning such a lot. That's really good to hear, Pam. I found the Butterick 6423 coat pattern in a charity shop and have been looking at different options on YouTube to help me make the coat. I've not made a coat before, and we have the picture of the coat there. It looks like a great one to start with. I realised that I need some further support and wondered if you could offer any advice on either where to find sections that may help in the classes I already have, or should I try to join a coat making class? I know I've asked a lot of questions here, and it's complex make, and I'm happy to purchase any classes that you have that would be helpful. Sorry, that goes over a page. I've really enjoyed your teaching style, and I feel confident following your classes. May you and yours have a very healthy and happy Christmas, and all the best to all my fellow students for 2025. And that's from Pam. So Philippa, what can you say to Pam?
Well, first of all, I would say thank you very much, Pam. That's a really lovely message to everybody. It looks like a really nice pattern, and it says on it easy, and I do not think that you will have any problems with this whatsoever. If we look at the line drawing, and I always think the line drawing is so important, you can see the construction of the actual garment. You haven't got set-in sleeves, you know, there's no difficult fitting around the armhole. It looks like a one-piece sleeve. It's just got a seam at the underarm. You've got a little pleat in the back there, but that is very easy to do, and that goes into a seam sort of at the lower hip. The collar is a grown-on collar, so there's no separate piece there, although there will be a facing, but that's joined at the centre back. And then you've got a nice deep pocket by the look of things there. So I would say to you that if you have done all of our classes, or a lot of our classes, you will have the skills that you need. But what I would say to you is that you might just need to treat things just slightly differently if you choose a very thick woolen fabric. And I often, when I'm making coats and that kind of thing, and just when I'm following people down the street and looking at the back of the collar, I would say to you that if you've got a fairly thick fabric, that I would add about 1/4 of an inch to the upper collar. So the bit that's on the top, it's actually going to be the facing, if you think about where it sits, on that back edge and all the way around the collar until it gets to this point where you would blend it in to the original pattern. Because what I hate to see on collars is where the under collar seam is visible when the garment is in wear. So if you've got that extra 1/4 of an inch, you can roll the top collar over the under collar, baste that in place, steam it, top stitch it if you want to, and you will have a much more professional looking thing than if you don't do that. You might get a similar thing happening on the pockets. You don't want the seaming rolling to the outside on the pocket. So on the pockets where you've got that kind of, it comes down and then you've got that curve there, you could add 1/8 of an inch on that bit, just so that you've got enough fabric to kind of make sure the seam is on the inside, but you haven't got any tricky hems or cuffs or anything like that. So that would be the only thing I would say to you on that. My only other immediate thought is when you come to do the one buttonhole, just look carefully about where it goes, but you will need to use a manual buttonhole foot. I imagine, I'm pretty sure this is the case, that if you've only got an automatic buttonhole foot, it won't make a buttonhole that is long enough for the large, because you want a fairly large, it wants to be a feature button. But also, if you've got a thick woolen fabric and you've got that extra seaming on the edge, often the foot of an automatic buttonhole will not travel over that. So a manual buttonhole, and you're only doing one, is what you need to do, and that may mean that you need to purchase that foot because it doesn't come as standard with your machine, but it's a really useful thing to buy. Christmas is next week. You still got time.
Okay, thank you. I was saying to Philippa that this time next week it's going to be Boxing Day, and that was a bit of a shock to both of us, I think, when we realised that. So hopefully you'll be able to do that. Sounds like that's going to be a great coat, Pam. Okay, the next question is from Suzanne Batty. And Suzanne says she's got a problem with her machine that she's wondering if Philippa can help out with. Sometimes the machine refuses to sew and I find bits of thread caught in the springs behind the race. And there's a picture that goes with this. It's quite a good picture, so well done, Suzanne. It's either wrapped around the two springs or then finds its way into the machine itself. It's really tricky to get this out from this spot, and often the thread is not from a current project, it's from an old project. Any ideas or solutions to either stop this happening or how to safely clear it would be very helpful. And that's from Suzanne. What do you think about that one, Philippa?
Yeah, Suzanne, I've had a really good think about this, and it isn't an issue that I've ever really come up with. And I have a similar type of machine with the same style of bobbin. All the mechanics inside are very similar. My only thought on that is if you use the automatic thread cutter, thank you, whether it was cutting threads. I don't like the automatic thread cutter, and I'll explain to you why I don't like it. What I find often is that you use the automatic thread cutter, you come to sew the next seam and the needles come unthreaded. You have to be really careful to take the work out to the back so the needle doesn't become unthreaded. And then I don't find it very neat, because even though it's cut the threads close, you always get these messy little tails that I need to go back and address and trim off later. But I wonder if that is kind of encouraging thread to get trapped inside or something. I mean, if you leave a long tail top and bottom, it's always on the outside of all of those workings, isn't it? And when you watch me in the class, you'll see that often when I start off sewing, I'm holding on to my thread tails, or I may have sewn onto a leader strip, something like that, so that there aren't any loose threads there. That is all I could really come up with. I mean, the only other thing I was kind of thinking, could there be some kind of little damage, a burr or something in there that was catching the thread and dragging it down and chewing it. So I would really like you to get back to me on the thread cutter. God, I've said it so many times. I've only had 2 sips. It's just not good enough, is it? Okay. To whether that is what you're doing. It may be, if that isn't what you're doing, and that if you try not doing that, if it doesn't alter it, you might have to take it in and see what the actual professionals can suggest on that. Not that I'm not professional, but...
A professional machine repairer, which you're not, Philippa. You're not. Okay. Thank you, Suzanne. Hopefully you can. That will help you get to the bottom of that. The next question is from Maggie Rooney, and Maggie says, "I've heard something regarding floating interfacing. I don't know what this is. Can you explain, please?"
So Maggie, it's a good, short, succinct question there. I had to go and have a look online and Google it, because I thought, what, floating interfacing? Really, it is when you are doing machine embroidery and you need to stabilise the embroidery, and it's interfacing that is not attached, so it's not fused onto the fabric. It is left, it is just held in place, really, in that sense, and then it is cut away, it's got rid of. So not really applicable to garment making unless you were doing some kind of embroidery on a garment. So that, in a nutshell, very briefly, is what that is.
Thank you. Got that sorted out. The next question is from Hilary Hardman, and Hilary says, what are the best pressing techniques for thick, e.g. wool, excuse me, for thick fabrics when pressing collars and facings? I really struggle to get great pressing without causing seam allowances to show through. And many thanks, that's from Hilary Hardman.
Hilary, I meant to get out my pressing equipment, which is in the basket under the ironing board there, and I've completely forgotten to do it. I'm so sorry, but I will chat about it. David, so the long stick, David, and sorry, Peter, and the...
There's one.
Oh yes, that's exactly what I wanted. Thank you very much. And the long wooden stick. And there's another one as well. There's a dowel. Thank you. This is my husband beating equipment.
I was going to say,
yeah.
I'm going to move back a bit.
Okay. Don't really need that. Thank you. Right. Okay. Now I'm better armed, definitely, to explain this. Now, this is Peter. Was this a piece of a banister? Is that what it was?
It's got that flat on it.
Yeah. So, oh right. I thought you'd taken that off. And
That's for fastening the metal.
yeah. And did it come out of a skip? Don't know. Anyway, Peter has a wood store that is the envy of many men, but it's not the envy of me. However, it is very useful. So this is a piece of banister, and so it has a flat side. So it's really basically a dowel. I mean, you could an old curtain pole or something like that. You could plane off the end. So it sits very nicely on my ironing surface. Now then, if I've got a really thick fabric and I want to press a seam open, if I place the seam on here and I press with steam with a cloth, what you can see is that the iron will only really touch the fabric on that proudest, highest part there. So it's going to press the stitching and press the seam open, but the thickness isn't going to create an impression through to the right side because that's not getting touched with the iron. Okay, so I said with a pressing cloth, and I often use a clapper like this, so that when I've pressed it, I take the pressing cloth off and then I hold the clapper on it. And sometimes I use this one. This is quite useful. This is just a bit of, I don't know, it's just come from it says pine strip wood 12 by 21. That is the millimetre measurement. So it's about 1 centimetre, about 2 centimetres. And that's very useful. What that does is that holds the steam in to really help the seam actually set as it is cooling. So that is a really great thing to get yourself if you're doing long seams. But collars, yeah, a little bit more of a problem with that. Now, let's say you've got a 2-piece collar on a coat, something like that, and you want to press it. What I would tend to do is I would press all of the seams open first. So I would trim and grade them if I felt that was what was needed. And I always leave, when I grade the seams, I generally always leave the widest one to the top because you get less of an impression. If you have the narrowest seam to the top and then the slightly wider one underneath, you're going to kind of see that more, if that makes sense. But you can get in and you can press the seams open. And the short bit, so you've got your collar like this, and then you've got a long seam. It's quite easy to get into the long seam, but when you get to the tips, you can pop that over here. So sorry, so the short seam, you can pop this inside and you can just press the short seam open and you can get into both of the corners with something like this. Now what I find is that once you've pressed the seams open, again with steam and your pressing cloth, what I would do is I would take that collar and I would baste it, and I would be rolling the seam to the underside. It's like what we just chatted about with the coat. In a good pattern, the under collar pattern should be smaller than the top collar pattern. I would roll the seam to the inside and I would baste it, not too close to the edge, a good 1/4 of an inch away, with a fairly long basting stitch. And then I would take that collar, and you will find once you've pressed the seams open, it's all going to sit much better. When you've done that and you've basted it, put it on your ironing surface and just give it a very light press under your pressing cloth with steam. Don't put your clapper on it. Sometimes I take the pressing cloth off and I just put my hand on it so that I'm not putting too much pressure on it. That will make all the difference in the world. So collars and facing, yeah, those are my two big go-to pieces of equipment for those jobs. I can't think of anything else at the moment that I need to tell you on that, but as we keep saying, Christmas is coming.
Okay, thank you. Bill Clinton just popped up there on the chat, so I got rid of him. Hillary Clinton. Hillary Hardman said that was brilliant. Thank you, Philippa. That was really helpful on the pressing. And Suzanne Batty, who we were talking about the problem with the thread in the machine. She says she does use the thread cutter sometimes, but she usually pulls it through. And she's been to the tech by the sound of it, and they didn't have an answer. So
I'll think more about it, yeah. And if I come up with any other ideas, I'll get back to you.
Okay, so we're coming towards the end. A couple more questions to go. The next question is from Leslie McKinley, and Leslie says, I know Philippa mentioned in the lessons about the tailor's dummy. I've looked into them, and so unsure and I'm sure as to which one to get, as I'm a total beginner and it would be just for myself. Size 10 clothes, so I guess I get a size 12. Approximately how much and brand to get a decent one? Thank you. Have a lovely Christmas. And that's Leslie McKinley.
So Leslie, yeah, it's quite a tricky one, isn't it? Because you don't want to spend a lot of money on something that you may not find very good. I think because you are a beginner, you don't know how much you're going to love garment making. So I don't want you to invest a lot initially. I wouldn't go too much on size. I would measure yourself and then find the size of the dummy. And I would choose the dummy that has the closest measurements to you rather than going by size. I think that's the first thing to say. I think you can expect to pay about £150 on something like eBay. Your daughter Maisie got a good dummy, didn't she, on eBay for about that price, was it?
I think it might have been a little bit
more. A bit less than that. Okay. So I would have a look on eBay and Etsy and various sites like that. You can get all kinds of different styles with legs if you want to make trousers, or you can just get ones that are more suitable for dresses and skirts. They're very useful if they have some taping around the waist and at various points, the bust point and the centre front, because that helps you with your fitting. So look for one that's got a tape on it. The one that I've got is it's actually a student level one, and
behind your
thank you. The make, the kind of British make, is Kennett and Linsell, but you will pay £500 upwards with them, and I think at this stage in your kind of sewing career that's too much money really. But for anybody else, Kennett and Linsell. There is I have another tailor's dummy, and it's a Stockman, and Stockman are a Parisian brand. You do see them in auctions, and you do see them coming up on eBay and other sites second hand. They can be an old type, and body shapes have changed, and so an older one would have a smaller bust and perhaps a smaller waist. But if you can pick one up at a good price, they are often worthwhile, and they're very robust. So I would say that you want to be looking at eBay and that kind of thing, and don't go by size, go by measurement.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, just fending off people. Right, so hopefully that is helpful to you, Leslie. The last question is from Deborah Peterson, and we've got an image that goes with this. I think I've teed it up. I had the great fortune of visiting Joel and Sons fabric store in London in November, and I was able to purchase a beautiful piece of boucle from my Chanel. Did I pronounce that right? Is it boucle?
Boucle, yeah.
From my Chanel jacket making. The clerk insisted that I interface this with non-woven fusible interfacing the entire piece before I cut it. What are your thoughts on doing this? Also, I have showed you the pattern that I intend to make. Is it possible to shorten this without ruining the contour of the pattern? So Philippa, Non-woven fusible interfacing the entire piece and shortening it. What do we think?
Okay, so Deborah, I'm also a Clark because my maiden name was Clark, okay? And this Clark tells you not to interface the whole piece. You will ruin the lovely soft handle of that beautiful piece of fabric. And when you, I don't know if you've watched it, we didn't actually have time to check, but the Chanel jackets, our Chanel style jackets, and the real Chanel jackets, the lining and the outer fabric are sewn together with very discreet lines of quilting so that the lining fabric stabilizes the outer fabric, but it doesn't change the lovely soft handle and the look of that. If you interface that, it's going to be really stiff and no fun to sew and no fun to wear. So if you follow exactly what we do in the class, your fabric will work beautifully. It's a gorgeous piece of fabric, will look absolutely lovely. You will maintain the soft look and the handle. It'll be more pleasurable to sew, and when you wear it, you will enjoy wearing it. It will feel, you know how some garments, you put them on, they just feel right, don't they? You don't know you're wearing them. That's what you want. You don't want to feel like, oh my goodness, I've got that silly hat on and I've got to sit up straight all the time. So no, don't do that. And then in terms of shortening, yes, I personally also prefer a much shorter jacket. I look much better in a shorter jacket. So you can do two things here, and I don't know your kind of size and shape and your body length and that kind of thing, but there will be a place on the jacket where you can fold out a section. So you can definitely do that, but you can also take it off the bottom. So it might be that you do a combination of folding out on the line that says lengthen or shorten here, and also take some off the bottom. I would just say be a little bit cautious on how much you take off, because you can always trim a little bit off later on, can't you? But you can't add it on. Just don't take too much off, and maybe just leave yourself a little kind of extra inch, half inch, something like that, just so you've got that little bit of tolerance to try. But yes, thank you. Just follow the class. It'll come out absolutely beautifully. It really will. So that's all the questions, isn't it? So Peter, we're bang on the nail at 8 o'clock, aren't we? It's unheard of. Unheard of.
Right, the two lucky festive winners are Margaret McFarlane and Kim Ranson.
Well, Margaret and Kim, the best scissors England can make will be on their way to you. So David will get in touch with you to find out your postal address. It may be that these do not arrive until the new year. We may not get those sorted out for you, but we will get them sorted out, and we hope that you thoroughly enjoy using them for many, many years to come. A quality British product. So thank you all for all of your support and all of your wonderful input over the last year. It has been marvellous just watching everything that you do, and both David and I think Peter feel very proud of everything that you achieved. It is a really great pleasure to see your successes, and also to help out with those things that don't work quite so well. And I just do want to sort of encourage those of you who perhaps are a little bit reluctant with Facebook. The group is a wonderful supporting group, and there's a whole kind of raft of knowledge there. All of the people that are involved in our community have lots of sewing experience. It isn't just me. So do tap into that, because it just makes it easier, and just to know that somebody's out there wanting you to do their best is really marvellous. So we will see you in 2025 towards the end of January for our first session of the new year, and we will keep doing what we do, and we hope that you keep doing what you do, and that you have the most marvellous time over the Christmas period and into the new year. And we look forward to seeing all your creative mates in 2025. So from Peter,
bye-bye,
and from David,
Goodbye,
and from me, and of course from Kelly, we won't forget Kelly, thank you all so much. Thank you for joining us this evening. Have a wonderful Christmas.